I have a question.
Of course. What's on your mind?
In XSplit, when I'm recording, if I hit the speaker icon and it says X, does that mean I am muted and it no longer is picking me up?
Exactly. If you see that little X on the speaker icon, it means your microphone is muted and XSplit isn't recording your voice at that moment. So if you want to be heard again, just toggle it back on.
Okay, now I have it toggled with an X, but the mic monitor is still going up and down as I talk. Is that okay?
That can be a bit confusing. The mic monitor is often a local preview showing your input levels, so you can see if you're talking, even if the audience can't hear you. If the icon is muted, your voice won't go out in the recording or stream. So as long as that X is there, no worries, your audience isn't hearing it.
Okay, got it. Okay, because I got to admit, when I got that X, I was expecting the monitor to go black. So you're right. That was confusing.
Yeah, totally understandable. Those little details can trip anyone up. But now that you know, you've got full control. If you ever want to double check what's actually going out, a quick test recording can confirm. But hey, you've got this.
Okay, now another thing that I'm going to be doing, I was going to be doing, the shorts as basically as after uh, posting announcements. Okay, I am now deciding I am now going to do them ahead of time as preview advertisements.
That sounds like a great show. Teasing the content ahead of time can make users believe you're on the site and build anticipation. Plus, it might boost engagement with the main content posts. Are you thinking of using those previews on your student sites?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. What I'm doing was what I was thinking of doing. Like now I like right now I have put up it says Turn to the Vice episode 3 starting at 7 p.m. So actually I have already started my stream, but all it has right now is the video of the preview slide.
That's a solid approach. Having that starting ad slide sets expectations and gives folks time to show up. As you gain more viewers, they'll appreciate that consistency. When you're ready to switch from that preview slide to your live content, your method will have hit a flawless stream.
Now but that also creates a little bit of work for me. Because now when I'm done, now the thing's uploaded to YouTube, and now the video has a half hour buffer in the front that just has a slide and is all quiet. Now, obviously, someone that wants to listen to the episode doesn't want to listen to a half hour of silence. Now they gotta, you know, toggle ahead somehow and get to the speaking portion. But I would then like to actually remove that. So how do I do that? Do I have to kind of like download my machine, put it out on uh, not XSplit, that's the recording thing. Um, Stop. What's it called?
I think you mean using an editor, maybe Shotcut since you've tried that.
Shotcut. That's what I was trying to think of. Shotcut. Uh, for some reason, the word stopgap was coming to my name. My name stopgap was great. Shotcut. So I can use Shotcut then to cut out the first half hour of silence, and then reload it back up to YouTube. Or is there another way, easier way?
Honestly, that's the most direct and most streaming method. YouTube doesn't have built-in trimming or start the live video after it's ended. But once you're used to it, trimming Shotcut will be a quick step.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, but I wanted to check with you first because maybe there was something that I didn't know about. Okay, so that sounds like the approach I got to take.
You got it down. Once you trim
in Dylan's Radio Theater, like when I'm gonna do, some coattails. Actually, what I could do is I could do a little longer, preview, maybe a little over a minute, going over what I plan on producing the following week. Yeah, and I could say, next week, we're gonna have the Miles McGee episode on 7 PM Monday, but then on 7 PM Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday, we're going to have these episodes on Dylan's Radio Theater. On Tuesday, we're gonna have Edgar Allan Poe, on Wednesday, we're gonna have et cetera, do it like that. Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, I could do that. And they're gonna be coming in on a real reading, and it won't be a produced thing, it'll be me reading it. So it'll be a live narration of. Yeah, exactly. Okay, look, why do I have to come up with all these ideas? You're not coming up with any ideas at all. Not bad, not bad, not bad, I'll have to think about that. I mean, I like the idea, I'm just not quite sure how I would do it. Yeah. Yeah, not bad. Yeah, a little peek behind the curtain, yeah. That's a good idea. But I really can't do that until I have some people watching, some people, tuning in to listen. Until I have an audience, doing that is. Until I have an audience, that makes no sense. Okay, very good. they get notification every time something gets posted, correct?
Yes, that's generally how it works. If they're subscribed and have notifications turned on, and depending on their notification settings, they'll get alerted when you upload something new.
So therefore, if they have notifications on, then when I put out a short that has a, an announcement and a preview description of an upcoming episode of either Miles McGee or Dylan's Radio Theater, they'll get that, correct?
Exactly. If they've got notifications enabled, they'll get that alert for your show. It's a handy way to make sure your audience knows when a new episode is on the horizon.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, okay, very good, thanks, that's what I need to know. Good evening, and welcome to Dylan's Radio Theater. I am Miles McGee, private investigator here in downtown Pittsburgh, an old city with newer secrets layered on top of the old ones. A place where people love and live, but also hate and die. I work when people do the latter. I've had my own practice for some years now. The case I'm about to tell you happened not too long ago. This is the case of the turn of the vice. I was hired on Tuesday by Robert Harlan, Chief Financial Officer of Regtex in downtown Pittsburgh. I met him in a small conference room in their downtown offices, only 4 chairs and a table. It was winter and overcast grayness lit the room. Harlan didn't waste any time. He slid a manila folder across the table. I let it lie. "Mr. McGee, thank you for coming on short notice," he said. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" I said. "Independent verification," he replied. "Due diligence. Bottom line, we are missing some money. We need to know how and where it became missing. I understand you understand how businesses work. As a detective, I want you to look at our processes and find out what happened." "Simple enough," I said, and we proceeded. "You have counsel?" I asked. A second man entered as if he had been summoned by the question. Mid-50s, perfect suit, the kind of face that never looked surprised because it never was. "Thomas Riley," he said, offering a hand, "General Counsel." His handshake was firm and exact. There was a precision about him that was hard to mistake. "We'll keep it simple," Riley said. "We need a dispassionate view from an outsider. You will review the materials, speak to the relevant personnel, and provide your assessment to Mr. Harlan. That assessment will help us decide next steps." "And the issue?" I asked. Harlan's smile was polite. "A control failure, potentially deliberate, potentially criminal. Our internal auditor appears to have acted outside his professional role." "Really? You think so?" "What's the auditor's name?" I asked. "Daniel Mercer," Harlan said, "internal audit manager. He has custody of certain controls and documentation. He also has a grievance history which may be relevant." Riley slid a second folder across the table, thinner than the first. "Engagement letter," he said. "Scope, confidentiality, fee structure, standard. I hope it suits you." "Standard?" Well, so far this felt certainly odd, not standard. I looked at the engagement letter and fee structure, daily fee, plus expenses, if any. Seems they hired consultants before. "First week up front, then daily," I said. "Acceptable," Harlan said. He handed me a check with the right amount on it. Interesting, I thought. How did he know? I opened the first folder. The material inside was organized. Indexed, executive summary, dates, signatures. The narrative as presented was clean. Mercer had identified a weakness in internal controls. Mercer had proposed a remediation plan. Mercer had delayed escalation. Mercer had created a separate set of working papers. Mercer had inserted language that minimized risk. And Mercer had signed off on all representations that later proved false. The documents didn't read like a mess, they read like a story. And in that story, Mercer was the author. Harlan watched my eyes move over the pages. I could feel him measuring how long it took for me to see whatever it was he wanted me to see. "Your first impressions?" he asked. "First impressions is free," I said. "Second cost you." Riley smiled slightly. He recognized the game and was familiar with it. I kept reading. There were email chains printed neatly, each page stamped with an internal retention code, a memo titled Control Exception Summary, signed by Mercer, a second memo titled Management Response, drafted by Mercer but acknowledged by Finance, a third, more delicate document, a written representation letter that carried Mercer's signature in ink. It was all so tidy. If Mercer had stolen money, then this is what you'd want the world to see afterward, just before you pointed at him. It was everything a prosecutor needed, if a prosecutor was needed. "What's the alleged theft?" I asked, without looking up. Harlan's answer came quickly. "Misappropriation through vendor payments. False invoices approved under a control process Mercer owns. There are indications he created the controls to facilitate the payments."
Indications? I repeated. Riley leaned in. We are not making accusations. We are preparing for the possibility of mandatory reporting. If an employee has committed a crime and attempted to conceal it through falsified records, we need to know that now. Not making any accusations, I thought? This packet is nothing but an accusation. He said falsified records as if he had practiced it in a mirror. What's Mercer's access level, I asked. He has access to internal audit files, control testing documentation, and certain financial systems for monitoring, Harlan said. Not for transactional approval. That is part of the issue. He appears to have inserted himself into a process where he did not belong. I nodded, slowly noting what he said. I turned the pages. I took in the signatures. I took in the sequence. I took in the little labels that told me where each document wanted to live. And then I did what I always did. I began constructing a timeline. A timeline will tell me what happened, when, by whom, and hopefully why. I pulled a legal pad from my coat pocket and wrote 4 columns. Date, event, impact, actor. Harlan's eyes flicked to the pad. Riley's did too. Neither of them commented. They thought the pad was merely for notes. They didn't understand it was for dismantling. Here's what I need, I said, closing the folder halfway. Access to the original electronic files, not just printouts. Interview with Mercer, interview with whoever owns accounts payable, and a list of every person who touched these documents before they landed in this binder. Riley's expression held steady. We can provide controlled access. Chain of custody matters. Chain of custody always matters, I said, if you want me to understand what happened. Harlan's smile tightened, then relaxed. Of course, he said, we want transparency. I nodded as if transparency was something men like Harlan ever wanted. Riley gathered his folders, aligning the edges with the table. One more point, he said. This must remain confidential. No outside discussion, no contact with regulators. You must report to us. I met his eyes. To you and to my files, I said. Riley didn't smile at that. Harlan stood, signaling the meeting was over. Mr. McGee, we appreciate your professionalism. We want the truth. Of course. The truth is always what I seek, I said. I collected the binder, the engagement letter, and my fee. Men like Harlan always said they wanted the truth, which means they wanted a version that held up. Which means they wanted a version that held up to their version of the truth. As I left the building, the winter air hit my face like a correction. I sat in my car for a moment with the binder on the passenger seat. On the cover, in black ink, someone had written, Mercer documentation package. I collected the binder and engagement letter and my fee. Men like Harlan always said they wanted the truth, which meant they wanted the version that held up to their version of the truth. As I left the building, the winter air hit my face like a correction. I sat in my car for a moment with the binder on the passenger seat. On the cover, in black ink, someone had written Mercer documentation package. I opened it again, not to read the narrative yet, but to look at the dates. Because if Mercer was guilty, the dates would still make sense. And if he was innocent, they would eventually show me where the vice had first begun to turn. I met Daniel Mercer 2 days later in a small office off the internal audit floor. No glass walls, no view, a desk, 2 chairs, and a filing cabinet that had seen better years. This office and the floor were out of date and shabby compared to the executive floor and small office I met Harlan and Riley in. Mercer stood when I entered. He looked like a man who had been standing up too often lately. Mr. McGee, he said, his voice was careful, not nervous, but careful. He motioned me towards a lone chair by his desk. Sit, I said. This is informal, but it is serious. You know why I'm here? Daniel said, yes, of course. You are looking to verify our procedures. Yes, I said, that is correct. It seems he did not know he was being accused. I did not tell him. He sat anyway, back straight, hands folded, as if posture alone might be taken into account later. I didn't start with accusations. Don't need to. I reviewed the documentation. I said, I want you to walk me through what happened and why, from the beginning. He nodded once. Of course. When you were assigned responsibility for the control in question, I asked. Mercer answered without hesitation. He had rehearsed this, not because he was lying, but because he had been asked the same question by too many people already. Formally, late in Q2, informally earlier. The control had gaps, everyone knew it. Who told you that? Finance, he said, indirectly through findings. I wrote it down. What did you do when you identified the weakness? I documented it. That's my job. You proposed remediation? Yes. You didn't escalate immediately? No. Why? He exhaled slowly. Because escalation isn't binary. You don't pull alarms every time something is incomplete. You verify, you test, you confirm. That's your view, I said. That's the standard, he replied, and for the first time, there was something sharp behind his voice. I didn't react. Did you create separate working papers? Yes, he said. Why? Because the initial findings were incomplete. Draft. I didn't want to contaminate final records with speculation. I nodded and wrote it down. Did you insert language minimizing risk, I asked? Mercer frowned slightly. I described risk accurately. There's a difference. Did you sign the representation letter? Yes. Knowing it would be relied upon? Yes. Knowing it later proved inaccurate? Yes, he said, then paused. In hindsight. That mattered to me not because it proved anything, but because it sounded very real. I asked him about vendor payments, about invoices, about system access. Each answer was precise, procedural. Mercer didn't sound like a man explaining theft. He sounded like a man explaining process to someone who might misunderstand it. That didn't clear him, but it didn't damn him either. It made him more credible to me. Did anyone instruct you to delay escalation, I asked? No. Did anyone instruct you to document things a certain way? No. Did anyone review your drafts before they became final? Yes. Who? He hesitated just long enough to register the question. Finance, he said. And legal, eventually. I noted it and moved on. When I left Mercer's office, nothing about the case had changed. The documents still worked. Mercer still looked responsible. The narrative still held. If anything, the interview made the story cleaner. Back upstairs, Harlan wanted an update. Initial impressions, he asked? Still reviewing, I said. Riley was there too, seated slightly back, hands folded, listening. Based on what you've seen so far, Riley said, does anything materially contradict the record? That was a careful question, framed to be answered one way. Materially? Not yet. Harlan nodded as if that were confirmation. We just want this handled properly, he said. If Mercer acted outside his role, we need to be prepared. Prepared how, I asked. For disclosure, Riley said, and accountability. Neither of them used the word if. They talked about steps as if the direction was already settled. Reporting, containment, communication. They weren't telling me what to find. They were telling me what would happen once I did. That was when the expectation became noticeable, not stated. Assumed. I asked for system logs, access histories, original file metadata. Riley agreed without resistance. Harlan approved it on the spot. They were confident, comfortable. People like that usually are. That night, back in my office, I laid everything out again. Same documents, same date, same sequence. I rebuilt the timeline, straight down the page to double-check it. Date, event, impact, actor, nothing changed. Mercer identified the issue. Mercer delayed the escalation. Mercer documented Dilly's decisions. Mercer signed off. If this were a simple case, it would have ended there. But it wasn't. The facts that lingered. It was the way the facts had been discussed, not investigated, not tested, but expected. They were waiting for me to arrive at an answer they already knew or wanted. That didn't mean the answer was wrong, but it meant I needed to be sure it deserved to be right. Mercer seemed so simple and sincere of a man. He just didn't feel like a liar or embezzler. I could be wrong. It has happened. But if I was going to accuse a man, I needed to be right. So I took my unfinished timeline and went home. The vice hadn't turned yet, but it was set. I stood outside in the small balcony of my loft home office. The chill was bracing. I liked to come out here to think. Watching the cars and people 20 stories down relaxed me and helped. I wasn't trying to prove Mercer innocent. That wasn't the question yet. But the story still felt wrong. Not false, just finished too early. When a case closes cleanly, it usually means someone wanted it closed. Real mistakes don't resolve themselves. They leave grit in the gears. They leave arguments, competing memos, someone saying wait while someone else says move. This one didn't have that. It had sequence. I went back to documents again, not the summaries, the raw materials, system records, access logs, metadata that only exists to someone so someone can be blamed if they needed to be. Mercer's work was cautious, almost boring. Drafts separated, language hedged, dates carefully noted. That wasn't concealment. That was a man trying not to be wrong. People who steal don't slow down to double-check themselves. They move. They rationalize later. Mercer slowed. That alone didn't clear him. Plenty of guilty men might slow down when they realize the ground is unstable, but the way he slowed mattered. He didn't redirect. He didn't minimize. He didn't try to bury anything. He circled, as if he thought he had found an error that didn't make sense yet. That was the first thing that bothered me. The second was time. Not dates. Dates can be adjusted. Time is harder. I rebuilt the sequence again. Same columns as before, same neat vertical lines, but this time I stopped treating the events as narrative and started treating them as mechanics. Authority doesn't flow backward. Access doesn't precede assignment. Permissions don't anticipate responsibility. The control designation changed before Mercer could have changed it. That was already clear. What I hadn't let myself do yet was follow the fact all the way to the end. If Mercer couldn't have done it, no one other could have done it either. That wasn't theory, it was structural. Whatever happened above him. That didn't mean malice. Senior people fix things all the time, sometimes badly, sometimes clumsily, sometimes with more confidence than care. But they don't usually rewrite time unless time is the problem. So I asked myself a different question. Not who did this, but why was this the only way to make it work? I stopped looking at Mercer and started looking at what his delay would have interfered with. That took a bit longer. I followed the trail sideways into financial dependencies that didn't belong in the control review, into transactions that behaved correctly only if you assumed the world hadn't noticed yet, into exposure models that were marked provisional but kept updating anyway, as if they were waiting for something to finish. That was when the number finally emerged. Not a line item, not in a total, in a sensitivity table. If a control failure was dated where Mercer thought it belonged, the unwind wasn't painful, it was fatal. The gap wasn't millions, it was hundreds of millions. It was an amount that, if gone, would likely destroy Regtex. Enough to tear through its capital, enough to trigger insurers, enough to leave nothing standing once the doors open. And Mercer had walked up to it thinking it was a rounding problem. That was when the case turned, not emotionally, but logically. Mercer didn't find a procedural error. He found the edge of a life structure that only worked if no one asked the next question. So he asked it, and they saw him do it. And from that moment on, Mercer stopped being an asset and became a liability. The timeline manipulation suddenly made sense, not as concealment, but as compassion. Buy time, finish the extraction, move the weight, then let gravity do the rest. And when it was over, someone had to be holding the bag, and Mercer was perfect. He was close enough to the controls to sound responsible, careful enough to look evasive in hindsight, slow enough to be framed as delay, thorough enough to leave a paper trail that could be reinterpreted once the order was changed. They didn't need him guilty. They needed him, the picture within the frame they had built around him. That was the moment I understood why I was there. They hadn't called me to investigate. They called me to certify everything and to place Mercer neatly in the frame. A perfect picture. A neutral third party, independent, unaffiliated, a clean signature at the end of the story that said the obvious thing was true because an outsider agreed. They wanted me to put the final touches on their work of art. The realization didn't come with panic. It came with clarity. I thought about the way Harlan talked, prepared, not curious. I thought about Riley's questions, framed, not exploratory. They weren't worried about what I might find. They were waiting for me to arrive where they already were. I leaned back and let the pieces sit where they had fallen. Mercer wasn't just innocent. He was correct, and that was why he had to be destroyed. Now I had to figure out who built this frame. I closed Mercer's file. It had no more facts for me to use. I needed to figure out who was behind this masquerade and what I could do to stop it. Whatever came next would be clean or obvious. Sharks don't surface where they need feeding, and there's blood in the water. I went back to EdgeTex 2 days later. Same building, same lobby, same quiet confidence that came from polished floors and security desks that had never stopped anyone important. If anything had changed, it wasn't the place. It was the way people looked at me when I signed in. Not hostile, just alert. Harlan met me this time without asking why. He was already standing when I entered his office, jacket off, sleeves rolled, as if he had been preparing for something physical and settled for me instead. Progress, he asked? Some, I said. I need clarification on a few points. The word clarification always makes executives nervous. It sounds small, but it never is. He gestured to the chair. I didn't sit right away. I walked to the window instead. Same view as before, same river, same gray sky. You looking at timing again, Harlan said. I turned back to him slowly. I didn't say that. He smiled, but it arrived late, a fraction too late. So I just want to make sure we're aligned, he said. This is about understanding how Mercer overstepped. It's about understanding how the record came to look the way it does, I said. Overstepping is just one theory. That word landed harder than I expected. Harlan's eyes flicked to the door, not to see if anyone was listening, but to check if someone else should be. Riley's tied up this morning, he said. Depositions. I'm not here to talk to him, I said. Not yet. That was true, mostly. I finally sat. Walk me through the vendor approvals, I said, just at a high level. Harlan exhaled. It wasn't relief, it was fatigue. Standard process, he said. Accounts payable initiates, controls validate, finance reviews exceptions. And when did that sequence change? It didn't. Then why do the permissions suggest otherwise? He frowned, not defensively, thoughtfully. I don't know, he said. That's what Mercer was supposed to explain. Then that answer told me more than anything else he could have said. Harlan wasn't lying. He was outsourcing certainty. Who signed off on the revised control language, I asked. Legal reviewed it, he said. Finance acknowledged it. Who drafted it? Harlan hesitated. Mercer, he said, then added quickly, based on guidance. Whose guidance? He didn't answer right away. That's not my lane, he said finally. I nodded. It was the first honest thing he said all morning. I stood. I'll circle back, I said. There's one more piece I want to understand. Which is, he asked, who is the most worried when Mercer slowed things down? Harlan didn't answer. He didn't need to. Riley's office was quieter, no windows, better walls, the kind of place where nothing leaked unless it was meant to. He looked up when I entered, always composed. Mr. McGee, I hear you have made progress. Enough to ask better questions, I said. That's when people get nervous, he replied with knowledge of interrogations. I sat this time. Riley stayed where he was. You're concerned about the timeline, he said. Again, he said it before I did. Concern is a strong word. I'm interested in how it became fixed. Records stabilize, he said. That's what systems do. Systems don't, I said. People do. Riley smiled. It wasn't friendly. It was appreciative. Daniel Mercer delayed escalation, he said. That's documented. After identifying something he didn't understand, I said. Or after realizing he had gone too far, Riley replied. That would require intent. Before authority... that would require intent, I said, before authority. Riley tilted his head slightly. Authority isn't always formal. Influence precedes designation. That was the slip. Small, clean, almost elegant. Influence preceding designation only mattered if you were thinking about timing before it was raised. I didn't react. Walk me through the insurance exposure, I said instead. Riley blinked just once. That's not directly relevant, he said. Neither was vendor geography, I replied, but it showed up in your notes. That was contextual, he said smoothly. Context has gravity. It pulls things in. Riley leaned back. You're very thorough, he said. That could be a strength. Or a liability, I said with a chuckle, trying to keep things light unsuccessfully. He smiled again, this one warmer. Sometimes, he agreed. I stood. I'll need one more meeting, I said, with both of you. Of course, transparency is important. As I left, I noticed something I hadn't before. Riley hadn't asked what I had concluded. He already thought he knew. In the hallway, I passed Harlan again. He looked up as if he had been waiting. All good, he asked. For now, I said. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on me a little bit longer than they needed to. He was starting to feel it, the imbalance. Back outside, the city looked the same, the sky was still gray, and I felt I had been under a cloud since I started with RegTex. I sat in my car and wrote nothing down. I didn't need to. Riley had built the frame. That much was clear now. He understood timing, he understood optics, he understood how a clean record could be manufactured without inventing facts. Harlan had agreed because the math worked, because the risk had been explained to him in controlled terms, because he trusted a man who spoke in procedural instead of consequence and can construct a legal proof narrative, or so he thought. Riley thought the structure was sound. He thought it was still inside. He was still inside it. No, he thought I was still inside it. That was the mistake, because frames only work if no steps back far enough to see the wall, and I had just taken my distance. The meeting was Riley's idea. He called it a wrap-up, final alignment. Language like that always meant someone believed the work was finished and wanted the paper to agree. Harlan was already there when I arrived, seated at the table this time, hands flat, eyes moving too much. Riley stood, smiled. Mr. McGee, I'm glad we could connect before your report is finalized. Finalized? Right on time. I set my folder on the table and didn't open it. We're prepared to move quickly, Harlan said, once your conclusions are in. I imagine you are, I said. Riley folded his hands. We believe the facts support a clear outcome. They do, I said, just not the one you planned for. Harlan blinked. Riley didn't. His eyes narrowed slightly like a lens adjusting. I've completed my review, I continued. Mercer didn't manipulate the controls. He didn't delay escalation for gain. He didn't have authority when the records say he did. That's not what the documents show, Harlan said. No, I said, that's what they say, different thing. Riley leaned in. You're treading close to an accusation. I'm concluding, I said. I opened the folder, not to show them everything, just enough. The control language changed before Mercer had designation. Vendor permission moved ahead of approval. The exposure only collapses if the dates are moved forward, which they were. Harlan's face drained. Riley's voice stayed level. You're suggesting coordinated error. I'm suggesting intent because accidents don't require compression and they don't require framing. Harlan looked at Riley, not for reassurance, for direction. Riley exhaled slowly. You don't have proof. I don't need it, I said. Not the way you think. I slid a single page across the table, a sensitivity model. If the control failure stood where Mercer logged it, the unwind destroys RegTex. Hundreds of millions, insurance triggers, regulatory exposure, insolvency, and within 90 days. There's silence. Harlan stood abruptly. You said this was survivable. I said it was survivable if nobody noticed, Riley said, without looking at him. That's why you believed him, I said. He explained the math, the timing. He told you this was the only way through. Harlan's voice cracked. You said it was legal. I said it with hold, Riley replied. I closed the folder. My report has already gone out, I said. File, document, referred. Riley looked up sharply. Referred where? Where it belongs, I said. Harlan stared at me. Do you know what you're risking? I do, I said. I don't understand how little it matters. Riley straightened his jacket. You should consider the consequences of stepping outside your role. There it was. Licenses, boards, quiet calls, assumed leverage. Pittsburgh a small town, he added. It is, I said, and people talk. Yeah, they do. He leaned closer. You think this ends well for you? I think it ends accurately, I said. After that, it's weather. The knock came then. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. Pittsburgh, police, first, plainclothes, economic crimes, then federal FBI, standing back, already observing. Warrants were produced, names read, instructions given. Riley went very still. Harlan sat down hard. As they began unplugging computers and opening filing cabinets, I stood. No one stopped me. Vice screwed shut, I thought. Mercer's office was 2 floors down. 2 officers were disconnecting his workstation when I stepped in. He stood by the desk, hands useless at his sides, face gray with shock. Daniel, I said. He turned. They're taking everything. I didn't. I know, I said. You didn't. He swallowed. I thought I'd done something wrong. You did, I said. He looked at me startled. You noticed. It took a moment for that to land. They had you tied and spitted for the rotisserie, I said. You were well cooked. Mercer's mouth opened, then closed again. But you're okay now, I continued. It's Harlan and Riley who will be cooked. He leaned against the desk, breath shaky. I don't even know what to say. No problem, I said. Just doing my job. He nodded once, then quieter. If there's anything you ever need, just text me if I can help. I met his eyes. Okay. I just might do that. Keep in touch. We shook hands, firmly. I knew he meant his promise. I left him there, standing in a room that finally made sense. Stepping outside, the blinding sunlight hit me. I stopped. The sky was clear, not a trace of gray. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd seen the sun. I drove home with the windows down. April was already there. The kitchen smelled like citrus. You're early, she said. Case ended, I said. She smiled. Good timing. There was an orange cake on the counter, bright, glazed, still warm. I cut into it before she could stop me. She laughed. Dinner was all she said. I gulped my first slice down. Can wait, I said, already cutting another slice, a bigger slice. We sat at the table, sunlight pouring through the windows, crumbs everywhere, savoring the cake together. Outside, Pittsburgh went on doing what it always did. It didn't need me. For a moment, that felt great. You just listened to Miles McGee, Private Detective on Dillon's Radio Theater, written, produced, and narrated by Craig K. Dillon. Listen every Monday at 7 p.m. Central Time to new Miles McGee's Mysteries. Click notifications to be notified by our previews shorts about upcoming episodes of Miles McGee Mysteries and Dillon's Radio Theater. Episodes will be kept on YouTube for a time. To access the full archive, you can subscribe on Patreon. The link is in the description.